Fishy, fishy, fishy! What's going on, fishy friends? Just got home from work. Take a walk downstairs, check out all my tanks, see how everybody's doing. Had a quick glance. Everybody looks good. I gotta start some feeding. And here's a tank I haven't talked about. Setting up a glofish tank for my little girl. She got to pick out the decorations, and obviously it's not what I would typically do to a tank. But we're gonna have some glofish in this thing. Super fancy. Anyway, so now that I'm home, I got a box waiting for me. With some livestock in here that I picked up from a member over on the Plant the Tank forums. This is not somebody that I think typically does a lot of selling. No indication on the box that there's anything live in here and that it needs to be handled carefully. But let's do an unboxing and see what we got here. Let's see, this is always difficult one-handed. Hopefully I don't cut myself or inadvertently cut anything inside the box that I don't want cut yet. I was just installing some carpeting the other day, and apparently I am in need of a new blade in my utility knife, because that is not as sharp as it could be. Well, looks like we pulled some fiberglass insulation out of the walls of our house before we packed this thing up. Not exactly what I would choose, but it does serve its purpose. Let's see, what do we got here? Some very pink newspaper. And we got some movement in the bag that should be full of cherry shrimp. Well, I see a lot of movement. That's a good sign. And I see some shrimp. So we're going to go ahead and give these a try over in that 10-gallon once again. I can't tell how many shrimp might be in this bag, and none of them look very colorful. They do look very, very young. I was hoping they'd be a little redder. That might be my own mistake for keeping an eye out for cherry shrimp instead of fire shrimp, or painted red shrimp, I think is another name for them. Bloody Mary shrimp. But we're going to go ahead and get them in this tank here. First what I'll do is I'll probably get them out of this cordon breather bag. And I'll work on a drip acclimation of some sort, because that's the only thing I could think of that I didn't do last time when I got some cherry shrimp, and nobody really survived past maybe a week or so. I've never technically done a proper drip acclimation anywhere. I usually slowly acclimate any new inhabitants for my tanks by keeping them floating in the bag in the tank for a while, and then slowly introducing some tank water before finally netting them out of that bag and putting them into my tank. But today, let's try a drip acclimation. So let's see if I can set something up. We're back a little bit later. What I have done is float the shrimp in their bag in the tank that I'm going to eventually house them in. This way they get acclimated to the temperature. Now, to acclimate them to the water conditions, I've got an air line that I put down there and kind of shoved behind the heater, up and out of the tank into one of these drip valves, I guess is what you want to call them. And we're going to start a manual siphon.
Ew, Dad, that's gross.
As my helper points out, that's gross.
Yes.
So you start sucking on the hose, and now we got a little drip. Now, if you see the drip, what I'll do is go over here to the valve, and you could make it a steady flow of water by opening the valve. Or you can slow it down to a drip by closing the valve. I think I want it right about there. That's barely a couple of drips a second, maybe a tiny bit slower even. I ended up getting a bit of substrate stuck in that airline, but that should be okay. So there we go, a nice quiet drip, and someone sees what we're doing. So, put that back up in there for now. We'll go to the sink and dump this out.
Can you tell them my name?
And this dropped off onto the ground. Alright, back in there. Now what we'll do is put the shrimp in here. And we'll open this up and drop the shrimp into this bucket so they can be drip acclimated. Hopefully, you are smarter than me and look in the bag before you shove a giant knife into it to make sure you're not stabbing a shrimp in the face.
Yep. Have to be careful of that.
Sure do.
Have to be smarter, Dad.
And
Charge.
you gotta make sure that you don't leave any shrimp stuck in the corners of your bag. Like that guy right there.
Yeah. This is still... What?
Alright, so we double check the bag and we make sure we get any little shrimp that are in there and make sure they get down into that acclimation bucket, we'll call it.
Yep.
It is tough to find these little guys. They can be almost microscopic.
Almost microscopic?
So, we check the bag very carefully, especially in the edges and the corners, and make sure we didn't forget anybody. And, alright, so I got everybody down in the bucket right now. My wonderful camera woman is helping me out on this, and you can see all the movement in that bucket. And you can also see that we are
I
slowly...
see a shrimp on the edge of the bucket.
Good catch. So we are slowly but surely, literally one drip at a time, introducing the tank water into this bucket, and that way it's not going to shock any of these shrimp, and it will slowly get them used to the parameters that are currently in this particular tank. Alright, we're going to let them acclimate for a while, and I'll check back in later, guys.